police car rolls up to the scene of a vehicle fire just in time for its dash cam to capture a flaming runaway van and trailer.
Hey, watch out!
The rolling blaze heads down a steep embankment and across several neighbors' lawns. The officer and Good Samaritans helped to try and put out the trail of flames. Fortunately, no one was injured. Breaking news, an active shooter situation unfolding in a supermarket. Police respond to a report of someone shot in the parking lot, then fired upon by a suspect with a long gun. Multiple people injured while law enforcement tries to communicate with the suspect barricaded inside. Spring break state of emergency. Massive crowds of mostly maskless partiers defying the curfew as Miami takes on the highest positivity rate for any large U.S. city. Police ordering crowds to disperse.
The city of Miami Beach is currently under a state of emergency.
Even firing pepper balls. More than 1,000 arrests since spring break started. The latest on the AstraZeneca vaccine. Could it be the next to be greenlit for emergency use? The company releases its data. How could be a global game changer. This has been called the vaccine for the world. What impact do you see it having in fighting the worldwide pandemic? New images of an overcrowded Border Patrol facility in Texas. Migrants, many of them children, huddled into makeshift tents, sleeping on floors as a record number of unaccompanied minors trying to escape violence and crushing poverty are seized at the border. We'll talk to the Democratic Congressman tonight whose office released those photos as the Biden administration faces the biggest border surge in more than 20 years. The rare charges now under consideration by the Justice Department against some of the suspects arrested in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. More than 10 years since federal prosecutors last brought them. What some are calling the Supreme Court's sleeper blockbuster case, the debate over property rights and unions, the future of organized labor potentially at stake.
Critics say you're out to attack unions, that you want to kill the unions. Is that what you're out to do?
And as technology develops, it's getting more difficult to spot so-called deep fakes. But it's not just celebrities and world leaders who are getting the phony video treatment. Tonight, how they can potentially ruin your life and the frustrating catch-22 victims often find themselves in.
I went in the car and started crying and was like, that's not me on video, because I thought if I said it that no one would believe me, because obviously, like, there's proof, like it's a video, but the video was obviously manipulated.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us tonight. We begin tonight with breaking news out of Colorado. We are currently monitoring an active shooter at a Boulder supermarket. It all apparently began with a man waving a long gun in the parking lot who then went inside the store. Tonight, there are reports of multiple victims. Police did take a man into custody a short time ago. You can see him there in handcuffs being led out of the store. Officials then started the painstaking process of working to clear the scene as terrified shoppers inside slowly left, accompanied by police. Tonight, the governor of Colorado is out with a statement saying that he is closely watching the events and his prayers are with the residents of his state in this time of sadness and grief. Kana Whitworth leads us off.
Tonight, an active shooter bringing terror to this Boulder, Colorado supermarket.
136, hold all radio traffic. Everybody just go.
Looks like we have an active shooter. The white male, middle-aged, dark hair, beard, black vest, short-sleeved shirt.
The call coming in around 2:30 p.m.
He's refusing to leave the premises.
Suspect armed with a rifle, unknown location inside. I don't think that shield's going to be big enough.
Law enforcement rushing to the parking lot of the King Soopers grocery store.
Suspect in the building. This is the Boulder Police Department.
The shooter, armed with a rifle, beginning his rampage in the parking lot. Then, moving inside the store. SWAT teams and fire responding, raising a ladder to the roof, trying to secure the scene. Reports of a shooter armed with a long gun moving inside the store. You can hear the gunfire on the radio traffic. Police trying to communicate with the shooter barricaded inside.
The entire building is surrounded. I need you to surrender now.
Thousands watching this live stream by ZFG Videography as the events were unfolding. At just about 3:30 p.m., police with long guns escorting this man, shirtless, with blood running down his leg. Leading him to a stretcher, he appears to be in handcuffs. The ambulance racing away from the scene.
And Kana Whitworth joins us now. Kana, there have been reports of multiple injuries at the scene. The situation, of course, still unfolding. What are you hearing so far?
Yeah. So, Lindsay, right now it is an incredibly active scene. Officers are still working to secure that building. What really hit me is you could see people scrambling to safety while holding hands. And also, of course, Lindsay, the University of Colorado is there in Boulder. They are alerting their students, and they're telling them that they also need to avoid this area. But again, this is under investigation still. It is unfolding, and as soon as we learn more, we will bring it to you.
Thank you for keeping us up to date on that, Kana. We appreciate it. Now to the fight to end the pandemic. Spring is, of course, often equated with new life and hope. As it's been said, no winter lasts forever. And with millions of people getting vaccinated every day, that rebirth and renewal of spring offers, it seems more palpable this year than just an ordinary change of season. But one concern is spring break and the thousands who seem to be simply throwing caution to the wind. Scenes like this in Miami Beach are causing public health officials to worry that progress on the COVID front could be derailed by the perils of partying. Victor Akendo reports in from Florida.
Tonight, a state of emergency in Miami Beach after a weekend of chaos.
City of Miami Beach is currently under a state of emergency.
Mostly maskless crowds from out of town hacking famed Ocean Drive, overwhelming police.
You are commanded to immediately and peacefully disperse.
Throngs of young adults defying a new 8 o'clock curfew. Police then using pepper balls to break up the crowd. Some trampled in the stampede. These scenes prompting city leaders to extend the curfew and close causeways into Miami Beach from Thursdays to Sundays through mid-April. Some are accusing the police of using unnecessary force on a predominantly black crowd.
I think that the response to crowds of black people doing whatever they're doing always tends to engender a little bit more aggression, a little bit more force.
But police insist they're targeting unlawful behavior.
We police behavior. Everybody should look forward to coming down here and again, enjoying that, but just do it within the confines of the rules. That's all we're asking people to do.
It comes at a pivotal point. Miami is seeing the highest positivity rate of large metro areas in the country at 9%, and cases are rising in 21 states.
We are at a critical point in this pandemic, a fork in the road, where we as a country must decide which path we are going to take.
On average, 2.5 million Americans are now getting vaccinated every day, a record 6 million over the weekend, and access expanding by the day. At least 24 states making the vaccine available to residents 16 and older in the weeks leading up to the president's May 1st deadline.
I'm just so happy to have my shot. I really am.
And tonight, promising results from the U.S. trial of a fourth vaccine from AstraZeneca. The company reporting the vaccine was 79% effective at preventing symptomatic infection and 100% effective at preventing severe disease and hospitalization.
The Data and Safety Monitoring Board identified no specific safety concerns related to the vaccines.
After several European countries briefly halted use of the AstraZeneca vaccine over concerns about a handful of blood clots, the U.S. trial found no increased risk or serious side effects.
This is a highly effective vaccine that's easy to use, easy to distribute around the world, and has an important role to play in curtailing the pandemic around the world.
And we'll get back to the global ramifications of that in just a moment. But Victor Akendo joins us now from South Beach. Victor, is there any sense that the curfew is working and possibly dissuading people from coming out and staying out late? And are other towns in Florida concerned that the spring breakers could just go there instead?
Lindsay, I think it might be a little too early to tell. Part of the problems that we saw on the first night of the curfew was just the short notice. A lot of people out there on Ocean Drive in the entertainment district simply didn't know that there was an upcoming 8 p.m. curfew, and that's what led to a lot of the clashes with police. Night two was a little smoother. Once they made their way outside of the entertainment district, they did end up in some residential areas, and there was some property damage. That said, it was a little more peaceful. We'll wait and see what happens on Thursday when that 8 p.m. curfew goes back into effect for this high-volume area.
And, Victor, let's go back to that AstraZeneca clinical trial. If all goes well, when is the soonest that Americans could start getting shots of this fourth vaccine?
Well, the company plans on applying within the next 2 to 3 weeks, which means they could get the green light from the FDA by the end of May. Keep in mind, with 3 vaccines already authorized, the Biden administration promised enough vaccine for all American adults by the end of May, so that AstraZeneca vaccine would be on top of that supply. Lindsay?
Victor Akendo, thanks so much, Victor. And now to the promising U.S. trial results of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. It's not yet authorized in the U.S., but today the company said that their vaccine is 79% effective in stopping symptomatic COVID-19 and 100% effective at preventing severe disease and hospitalization. Here to tell us more is Director of the Jenner Institute at Oxford University, Dr. Adrian Hill. Doctor, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Good afternoon.
Now, with these newly released trial results, can you walk us through how the AstraZeneca vaccine compares to those currently authorized in the U.S., namely Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson?
So you can compare them if you're doing that head-to-head. If you're doing different trial protocols, it's quite difficult. But what all these vaccines do and do extremely well is protect against severe COVID, against hospitalization, and against death from COVID. And the number we come up with there is 100%, which is similar to Moderna and Pfizer and other licensed vaccines. So the next question is, how well does it prevent clinical COVID or more mild disease? And the estimate we're getting is 79% or 80% in older adults. And that's a pretty good figure. It would be better if we had used a longer interval between the first and second dose, as we have shown in our program previously.
But how about the temperature, for example? For Pfizer and Moderna, they do have to be kept at a certain temperature. Is that the case with AstraZeneca as well?
No, ours is kept in the fridge like the vast majority of vaccines. The RNA vaccines are very unusual in that they need a freezer or even a deep freeze. And that's why this AstraZeneca vaccine is now being deployed in 101 countries, I heard today, and that number is steadily increasing. So it's a very deployable vaccine.
So this is more user-friendly, if you would, in that aspect.
It's user-friendly in Europe and in the United States. It's just possible to use in some low-income countries which do not have -80 freezers and really can't deploy a vaccine that needs to be frozen for a lot of the time. So yes, WHO are very keen on this vaccine because of its user-friendliness, as you say.
This latest AstraZeneca trial tested a more diverse population and also showed some promising results for adults 65 and older. Can you explain why the company took this testing approach and what was learned from it?
Yeah, well, that particular approach is really stipulated by the funder. This was one of the Warp Speed awardees to test this vaccine. And it's good that we were able to look at diverse ethnicities. The efficacy was not different between any one group and the other. And very importantly, we were able to show that the efficacy is equally high in older adults compared to younger adults. And that's an age group that we had fewer subjects in previous trials.
By the time that this vaccine is authorized in the U.S., most Americans will probably already have been vaccinated. But we're also in, of course, this global race against the spread of COVID variants. And this has been called the vaccine for the world. What impact do you see it having in fighting the worldwide pandemic?
Yeah, well, I would like to think that everybody will be vaccinated anywhere by the middle of the year. But even if that happens, we just don't know how long these vaccines work for. So it's totally possible that we will need to boost everybody at the end of the year to avoid another huge winter wave of disease and death. That remains to be seen. As you point out, these variants of concern are of concern, particularly the ones starting off in South Africa, but now spreading more widely. Some companies, including AstraZeneca, are working on a vaccine specifically for that South African variant in collaboration with our group in Oxford.
Right. No such thing as too much vaccine today or any time in the future. Dr. Hill, we thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you very much.
As of today, more than 15,000 unaccompanied children are currently in the custody of the federal government. New pictures released by a member of Congress over the weekend shows the conditions that some of these children are being kept in at the border. While the White House continues to insist that this is not a crisis, they are ramping up efforts on the ground at the border and also trying to address the issues causing people to flee their home countries to begin with. ABC Chief White House Correspondent Cecilia Vega brings us this report from McAllen, Texas.
Tonight, a first look inside this severely overcrowded tent facility on the southern border. The Biden administration not allowing journalists in, but these pictures taken over the weekend and released by Democratic Congressman Henry Cuellar show migrants, many of them unaccompanied minors, on the floor in cramped pods. Pods built to hold no more than 260 people. Instead, one housing more than 400 boys. The White House says they're working as quickly as possible to move these kids into shelters and homes, but the administration still refuses to call the situation a crisis.
Children presenting at our border who are fleeing violence, who are fleeing prosecution, who are fleeing terrible situations is not a crisis.
ABC News has learned that inside these facilities not meant for kids, more than 800 children have been held more than 10 days. That's more than 3 times longer than they're legally allowed to be there. Along the border, authorities say they've never seen anything like it. I'm out with deputies from Hidalgo County, Texas. Typically, they encounter about 30 migrants a day. But now
we're getting 30 within 30 minutes.
Wow. Pieces of their stories left all along these dusty roads.
Little kids, teens. I mean, these are...
Yeah, this is...
The baby's clothes.
Maybe what a...
2-year-old, 3-year-old.
3-year-old.
And just a few feet away,
it's a baby carrier.
They take me to a popular arrival spot called El Rincon, the corner, right on the edge of the Rio Grande. Undated cell phone video posted earlier this month by Congressman Cuellar show rafts filled with migrants.
So this is the river. The raft pulls up right here. This is their first foot on U.S. soil. Is there anything that's going to stop this?
I hope there is. I don't know what it is. There's got to be a better way.
Unlike Trump, the Biden administration is not sending unaccompanied minors back across the border alone. Critics say the White House moved so quickly to overturn Trump's hardline immigration policies that they failed to put a plan in place to handle the migrant surge that followed. Our Martha Raddatz pressing Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas.
Why were you not prepared for this?
Martha, let me be clear. We have seen large numbers of migration in the past. We know how to address it. We have a plan. We are executing on our plan, and we will succeed.
But the reality on the ground, political upheaval, crime, a terrible hurricane season, has migrants hoping the new president will welcome them.
Such desperate situations bringing so many to the border, and Cecilia joins us now. Cecilia, when we see these images of kids packed into shelters, and yet the administration still says this does not rise to the level of a crisis?
Yeah, and I don't know that they will call it a crisis, at least not anytime soon, Lindsay. I mean, you know this. The president is under pressure from all sides on the situation out here. It's not just Republicans at this point. Democrats that I'm talking to are increasingly frustrated with the way the administration is handling this. As for is this a crisis or not, I'll leave that up to the viewers to decide. Certainly the agents and the authorities that I'm talking to out here say they have never seen anything like this. One deputy that I was speaking with over the weekend when we were out there on the border says he's never seen a situation like this in his 17 years on the job. The administration is suggesting that the real crisis is the situation back in these home countries in Central America where these families are coming from. They say their alternative is to send these kids back across the border alone, and they say that's just not an option. That's not going to happen under this administration.
Any word yet about President Biden actually going to visit the border?
Well, he now says, and this is a shift, he says that he will visit at some point. He did not give a timeline on that. The vice president basically said as much today, too, that she has been and she expects to come back at some point. Republicans are very much pushing to see the president out here. Look, that's a political image they would like to see, an unfolding crisis with the president walking along a wall that he is refusing to continue to build in the wake of the Trump presidency. I don't know that you'll see that anytime soon. I do know from talking with sources at the White House there is concern about security and the large footprint that it would take to get a president down here on a visit like this one.
Cecilia Vega, thanks so much for your reporting. And ABC's Marcus Moore is with us now from between the border between Mexico and Guatemala. Marcus, you've been down there for a couple days now talking to the people who are making the trek north. Can you share some of the stories that you've heard and the conditions that they say that are so dire that they're willing to take this risk of traveling thousands of miles to come here?
Lindsay, we have heard so many stories from families, also from unaccompanied teenagers, and also a single dad. I think about Luis Pineda, who we met on our first day here in southern Mexico, and his 3-year-old son was on his shoulders. And I asked him why he left Honduras and on foot with his son to try to get to the north, and he said that he has nothing in Honduras. There's no work and no opportunity, and then there's violence. And he also said that he had 2 other children, so he has 3 in all, and he is a single dad. And it was when he was talking, Lindsay, about his other children, that he said that he's just trying to take care of his kids. He got emotional, and he walked away. And I think that really represented the real desire and frankly desperation that a lot of the families we've spoken with are enduring as they make this decision to travel. I talked to another family. They worked in the restaurant business, and because of the pandemic, the restaurant where they worked closed. And so that was one of the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will, if I could use that phrase, in them deciding to risk it all and take what little bit they still have and try to make it to the U.S. or perhaps in Mexico and seek asylum here. So those are just some of the stories we've heard, Lindsay. And of course, violence, we have also heard throughout historically, has been one of the reasons why people have left. But also, if you recall, there were a couple of hurricanes that hit. So there's a number of reasons, Lindsay, why people are leaving. And the one thing that I have gathered from all of the migrants, the families who I've spoken with, is that this was a hard decision. This is not something that was done lightly, and hopefully they hope people know that as they make this trek.
Yeah, such heartbreaking stories there. Set the scene for us about what you're seeing on the ground in terms of what happens when these migrants reach this point of their journey. Clearly, you're on a busy, loud highway there, but quite often, are they coming by foot through wooded areas?
Yeah, they are, Lindsay. People are getting here on a variety of ways, and you brought up the busy street behind me. When we were here a couple of years ago for the migrant caravan, you would see in a number of these communities people jumping onto trucks and vans as they drove to the north. We don't see that right now. In fact, most of the migrants who we've seen have been in small groups, and today we went to the border, Mexico's southern border with Guatemala, and we went to a river crossing, and what we saw there was truly remarkable, Lindsay. We saw dozens upon dozens of migrants who took boats, who were ferried over across the river on boats, and then they were loaded into a fleet of taxi cabs that were waiting on the other side in Mexico, and then those taxi cabs drove off in a convoy taking the migrants away. We understand that the particular area where we were earlier today is a common human smuggling and a human trafficking route, and it was remarkable because we saw all of this happening in broad daylight. It was very organized, appeared to be extremely organized, and there were no law enforcement agencies or representatives in sight at all. And the reason why that's significant, Lindsay, as you know, Mexican authorities have said that they would increase the patrols to try to stop the flow of migrants. Well, what we saw today, Lindsay, it was pretty clear that they can't be everywhere all the time, and people are still, by large numbers, going across the river into Mexico.
Yeah, such desperation. Marcus Moore, our thanks to you. Joining us now to discuss more on the ongoing crisis at the border is Texas Representative Henry Cuellar. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much.
Over the weekend, you released photos from what your office has described as the temporary overflow facility in Donna, Texas. You've avoided calling this a crisis. What was your reaction when you saw these jam-packed rooms, and have you changed your mind about using the word crisis?
Well, I'm certainly looking at the numbers. We're still below the high point of 144,000. So I'm waiting to see the March numbers. But I can tell you, those numbers just show terrible conditions of the young kids that are really so close together. It's terrible under a regular circumstance. But when you add a pandemic on top of that, those pictures can be disturbing.
But crisis, just for the definition, a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or anger, would you say that this kind of checks those boxes?
Well, if you want me to say it is a humanitarian crisis, I would say that. But we don't have people streaming across at those criminals coming across. But are we having a humanitarian crisis trying to take care of these kids? The answer is yes.
The administration has been saying for weeks that a big complication when it comes to housing these asylum seekers is COVID protocols. These pictures are certainly proof that COVID protocols are not in place. So is it COVID or is it the administration just really struggling to get a handle on the situation?
Look, the administration has all the good intentions. They want to treat the kids in a humane way, very different from President Trump. What President Trump did by separating kids, that was wrong. But in trying to do this, their good intentions are being overwhelmed by numbers, because not only are those facilities have probably double the amount of people they're supposed to have, number one. Number two, look what happened this same weekend. They released about 150 people, families, without even a notice to appear. That is unprecedented. That is just letting people go into the United States without even a notice to appear in an immigration court. I've never seen that before.
Do you have any concerns over the possibilities of this influx of people in such close quarters leading to an uptick possibly in COVID cases in your state or potentially beyond, since many times these migrant families have family members throughout the country? What kind of health care also is being provided to help them to prevent this from happening?
Well, keep in mind that the Border Patrol facilities will have some basic health care. The health care, the real health care is given after they leave the Border Patrol facilities, once Health and Human Services has them. I've been to the facility in Carrizo Springs. I've seen what they do. They provide education, they provide health care, they provide food, housing. That's different. Border Patrol facilities are supposed to keep people there for 72 hours. Some of them are staying there much longer. Border Patrol facilities are not supposed to be used for keeping kids. But if they can't get them out to Health and Human Services, then we do have a backlog, as you can see.
And today, the Biden administration named a special envoy for the Northern Triangle. While there is overlap in the issues facing these three very different countries, I want to ask you specifically about the country of Honduras. President Hernandez has been directly accused by U.S. prosecutors of not only taking bribes from drug traffickers, but also of smuggling cocaine. Now, he has denied all these allegations and has not been charged. But how much progress can be made in working with the Honduran government to curtail this mass exodus with this lingering reality?
Well, I'm glad that the administration is finally going to be talking to the Central American countries and with Mexico also. That's important because if you're just at the U.S. border where I'm at right now, and you're just trying to stop people from coming in, they're going to continue. You got to stop the flow of people before they come over here. And without engaging Mexico and those Central American countries, it's not going to be done. Now, I know there are some difficulties, those allegations that you talked about, the president of Honduras, but they still got to find a way to work with his office, because otherwise kids from Honduras, Guatemala, and Salvador are going to continue coming at a very fast pace.
And you co-sponsored the American Dream and Promise Act, which on Friday passed the House, putting aside the fact that you still need GOP Senate support for this to pass. Do you think that this is the right time for this kind of legislation? Are you at all concerned that it'll encourage more asylum seekers to come to the border?
Look, the dreamers are here already. They've been here since they were a young age. So we got to take care of that. That's a different issue. The guest worker plan, I think that the guest worker plan will actually stop the flow of people. Let me explain this. If we can get people to come in and work and go back, then Border Patrol can focus on people that have the bad motives. So actually, the guest worker plan, in my opinion, will actually help stop some of the flows that we're seeing now, the illegal flows that we're seeing at the border.
Congressman Cuellar, we thank you so much for your time. Appreciate your insight.
Thank you so much.
Now to the growing push to hold those who stormed the Capitol on January 6th responsible. Tonight, the U.S. attorney prosecuting the siege is speaking out about the hundreds of arrests and the sedition charges that might be coming, and on the two dangerous plots that failed. Our Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas reports.
Tonight, one of the men charged in the attack on Capitol Hill police officer Brian Sicknick ordered to remain in jail pending trial. George Tanios of West Virginia is accused of conspiring to assault officers with a toxic chemical. Officer Sicknick later died, and today Magistrate Judge Michael Alloy declaring, "It's hard for me not to look at this as anything other than an assault on our nation." This comes as the federal prosecutor who led the investigation into the insurrection tells 60 Minutes he believes some suspects could be charged with sedition, trying to overthrow the government.
I personally believe the evidence is trending towards that and probably meets those elements.
Michael Sherwin saying evidence shows some rioters were attempting to stop the federal government, in this case Congress, from performing an official duty, certifying Joe Biden's victory over Donald Trump. As for whether Trump himself could be charged,
Trump was the magnet that brought the people to D.C. on the 6th. Now the question is he criminally culpable for everything that happened during the siege, during the breach? But we have soccer moms from Ohio that were arrested saying, well, I did this because my president said I had to take back our house. But also, you see in the public record, too, militia members saying, you know what? We did this because Trump just talks a big game. He's just all talk. We did what he wouldn't do.
He suggested prosecutors are indeed looking into the former president's role.
Pierre Thomas joins us now from Washington. Pierre, 300 people have already been charged in the Capitol attack, and tonight you're learning that some of them may actually be seeking plea bargains.
Listen, we're told prosecutors could start plea negotiations with some of the suspects as early as this week. So we do expect some of these suspects, faced with videos and witnesses placing them at the scene of the crime, to plead guilty.
Pierre Thomas, our thanks to you. And when we come back, we're continuing to track that breaking news in Colorado of a shooting near a supermarket. The Supreme Court case heard today that could impact how unions organize. But up next, the growing concerns over deep fakes, those videos that appear and sound real, but they are not. Is the technology becoming too good?
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir.
We have made it through another week together.
America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's #1 most watched morning show. ABC's
Good Morning America.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for overall excellence in television. ABC News, America's #1 news source. Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True Crime 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
Take a look at this. There are reports that, quote, many children are missing after this massive fire swept through a refugee camp housing Rohingya Muslim refugees. More than 1 million live in camps like this in southern Bangladesh. The refugees tried to scramble to save what little they had, but we are learning that hundreds of homes, if not more, have been destroyed. Deepfakes are manipulated videos that can be passed off as the real thing, but they can be so realistic, they can be dangerous. Here's ABC's Matt Gutman.
Doylestown, Pennsylvania, a town of just over 8,000. 16-year-old Madeline Heim is a cheerleader here, a sport where success could lead to major competitions and potential scholarship opportunities. But any future in the sport was put in jeopardy by this video. This is a deepfake, a digitally manipulated fake video showing Madeline smoking a vape, which authorities say she never did.
I went in the car and started crying and was like, that's not me on video, because I thought if I said it, that no one would believe me, because obviously, like, there's proof, like, it's a video, but the video was obviously manipulated.
The video was allegedly sent to Madeline's cheer coaches to get her in trouble, and she isn't alone. Two of her cheerleading teammates were also victims of deepfake photos and videos that make the three girls appear to be naked, drinking, and smoking. all of them sent to their cheer coaches.
I just knew it wasn't real because I don't do that. It was hard because we didn't know who it was and who was doing this to me, and that's probably what scared me the most.
The alleged suspect behind it all, according to this criminal complaint, is a cheerleader's rival mom from Madeleine's cheerleading squad, Rafaela Ainella, who was charged with 3 counts of cyber harassment of a child and 3 counts of harassment. Ainella has denied all of the charges. This small city cheer rivalry may have gotten out of hand, but it only begins to skim the surface of how dangerous deepfake videos can be in the wrong hands. Like this video, it shows the dangers of deepfake technology by manipulating world leaders into saying what the creators wanted them to say.
Is it not hard for democracy to collapse?
Yeah, it's essentially a detective game. You're given an image, a video, or an audio, and you're asked to determine if it's authentic. I mean, this happens almost on a daily basis now.
Experts say that women are subject to the majority of deepfake crimes when their faces are edited into pornographic content.
Probably the most damaging deepfakes are ones that you and I have not seen, and those are in the form of non-consensual pornography. I suspect it's just a matter of time before we start seeing the entryway of deepfakes into the political arena as well.
Big Hollywood studios have sometimes taken advantage of deepfake technology for their films, the Star Wars franchise using it to complete The Rise of Skywalker after Carrie Fisher died before its completion.
This mission is everything. We cannot fail.
We expected Amy to win.
But it's not just the big screen. The most popular videos are ones that have gone viral on social media.
You see, I would never say these things.
From former President Obama to the Queen.
On behalf of myself, your Queen, and all at Channel 4.
To Spider-Man.
We have to shut it down. It's the real thing.
With technology developing enough for individual graphic artists to be able to create videos so realistic, it's hard not to believe your eyes.
What's up, TikTok?
Like this TikTok.
You guys cool if I play some sports?
Just a day on the golf course for the Top Gun star. Except this is not Tom Cruise's TikTok, and this is not Tom Cruise, but an eerily uncanny recreation made by this guy.
I'm Chris Humay. I live in Belgium. I'm 31 years old, and I'm an AI specialist and a VFX artist as well.
His videos of not Tom Cruise have been viewed millions of times online.
To create something like this, it's not easy, because on one hand, you need a professional actor, and on the other hand, you have me. I'm a deepfake specialist. I've been doing VFX for years.
This is a 5-second impression
but this?
of a snapping turtle coming out of its shell.
This is on an entirely different level.
People are always scared for technology, and we have to learn how to handle this stuff. We have to learn how to find confirmed sources to make sure the authenticity of those videos that it's real.
In Los Angeles, I meet Hao Li, punk rock on the outside, hardcore tech guru on the inside.
Maybe do a pose on the screen.
And an expert in the art of deepfake technology.
The technology of deepfakes is not absolutely new.
So deepfakes came out around late 2017, but the idea or the task of creating a digital human has existed in visual effects for a while. It's really the technology behind has become mature so that it's possible for any person to create these kind of content. Some faces.
Hao has been considered one of the best deepfake artists in the world.
What are the positive applications of a deepfake type thing?
There isn't much of positive applications in my point of view, but I think the core technology itself, which is, deep generative models, technologies that can generate imageries, is a fundamental component for many applications that I think is important.
But the message sometimes needs to be seen, to be heard. At his artificial intelligence startup, Pinscreen, Hao and his team have put together high-level technology that creates deepfakes in real time.
So we created it to show that it's possible to do convincing deepfakes, but also in real time, and swap into anyone you want.
With the program they've built, Hao can turn his researcher, Zijin, into Will Smith, or Leo DiCaprio, or Theresa May, instantly and with frightening accuracy.
At what point do we get to that event horizon where it's too perfect, and then anybody can fake anybody.
We're not too far away from it, first of all. I think it's technologically already possible to create like really perfect ones.
As he turns his head, you can see that his ear looks very different than Tom Cruise.
This is where Hani Farid comes in.
My name is Hani Farid, and I'm one of the world's leading experts in detecting deepfakes. Let me talk about...
In Berkeley, the beating heart of California's tech empire, Hani has become a digital watchdog for the AI age.
The resolution has gotten better, the quality has gotten better, it's gotten perceptually more compelling, they're more sophisticated, and here's the important part. It's more democratized. More and more people can create these deepfakes.
In order to keep ahead, Hani develops innovative techniques to stay one step in front of the fakes.
We look at behavioral patterns, how you move your head when you speak, how I raise my eyebrows when I want to emphasize something. So we tend to look at things that unfold over time. But look, a year from now, is how going to be better at synthesizing full-blown video sequences versus images? Probably. Okay, well, we'll have to move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So it's always a moving target.
What's your nightmare scenario for a deepfake?
I think I'll be really creeped out if like one day I have a Zoom meeting and suddenly someone turned out to be not the person I'm talking to. And I'm completely fooled.
I am absolutely sure that in the game of forensic scientist forger, I'm going to lose. I'm almost sure of that. Here's what I also know is I will lose, but I will make it increasingly more difficult for somebody to create a flawless fake.
So it's actually overlapping.
So interesting. Our thanks to Matt for that. Still ahead here on Prime. Why the Supreme Court will review a lower court's decision to vacate the death sentence of the lone surviving Boston Marathon bomber. We'll show you what it looks like when a volcano dormant for 800 years decides now is the time to wake up. And we've heard about the housing boom fueled by the pandemic, but what's happening in the rental markets? We take a look by the numbers. But first, our tweet of the day, Krispy Kreme providing some vaccination incentives.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart they did this.
It's the time of suspicion.
The ending's really tough. You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Admit it, these days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
24 hours, assault on the Capitol. The ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu. Now streaming. With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir.
We have made it through another week together.
America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's #1 most watched morning show. ABC's
Good Morning America.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for overall excellence in television. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
Welcome back, everyone. We turn now to the millions of Americans struggling to pay their rent during the pandemic. This is the federal moratorium on evictions is set to expire at the end of the month. We take a closer look by the numbers. Some 15 million Americans, that's nearly 1 in 5 American adults, report being behind on rent, according to a recent survey by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. And 1 in 3 renters in December reported only slight or no confidence at all in their ability to make their next rent payment, according to the Census Bureau. Some help is on the way. The nearly $2 trillion American Rescue Plan, of course, passed earlier this month, and that allocates more than $21 billion for renters' assistance and carved out millions to address homelessness. That's on top of $25 billion in rental assistance previously approved by Congress. But experts tell ABC News that very little of that has yet made its way to the renters and landlords most desperately in need, and we could see a new wave of evictions once moratoriums expire. Eviction filings were about 74% lower in late July of 2020 during a moratorium included in the CARES Act compared to the same time 1 year earlier. Still lots to get to tonight on Prime. The Supreme Court case that could impact how the fruits and vegetables we eat are gathered. Is the royal family hiring someone to help them with diversity and inclusion? And the basketball world is honoring the loss of an NBA icon. We look at the career of Elgin Baylor. But first, we'll look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
Guide you through it all tonight. We have made it through another week together.
Big hug, Griffin. We tell all our patients how much they are loved. We hold their hands.
David, we're showing our love and support for all the ICU staff.
They're the heroes in this.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. #1 in the morning, #1 in the evening, with America's most watched newscast. #1 in late night versus the competition. The #1 news magazine on Friday nights. #1 in politics across this historic election versus the competition. The #1 daytime talk show. And #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Vials of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine could soon be on the move, with newly released U.S. trial data showing it's 79% effective against symptomatic COVID-19, 100% effective against severe or critical disease and hospitalization, with no safety concerns reported. So far, White House officials say nearly 1 in 3 American adults have one shot. New mega vaccination sites popping up from Kansas City to Nashville.
Take care of my 98-year-old blind grandfather, so it's kind of important to get vaccinated as soon as possible.
Teachers in New Hampshire breathing a sigh of relief as they get their shots.
They are just beaming when they walk in the door.
Good news as fears grow over a potential 4th surge. Cases rising in at least a dozen states.
These statistics should serve as a warning sign for the American people. Now is not the time to travel.
But those looking to party seem to be ignoring that.
The city of Miami Beach is currently under a state of emergency.
More than 1,000 arrested in Miami since spring break began. Police shooting pepper balls into crowds defying the emergency 8 p.m. curfew, now extended until mid-April.
The U.S. Supreme Court could reinstate the death sentence for the Boston Marathon bomber.
Jahar Tsarnaev was sentenced to death for setting off twin bombs at the finish line of the Boston Marathon that killed 3 people. A federal appeals court overturned the sentence, ruling the trial judge failed to ask enough questions about the jury's exposure to pretrial publicity. The government faulted the ruling as inappropriate second-guessing. The Supreme Court agreed to review the matter. It could uphold Tsarnaev's sentence or make prosecutors decide whether to retry the penalty phase of the case.
President Biden has made clear, as he did on the campaign trail, that he has grave concerns about whether capital punishment as currently implemented is consistent with the values that are fundamental to our sense of justice and fairness.
After thousands of years lying dormant, a volcano in Iceland has suddenly come back to life. The volcano erupting for the first time in about 6,000 years, sending lava more than a half-mile down the mountain. Sits just about 20 miles from Iceland's capital.
And what better way to demonstrate the heat generated by lava than, I guess, a little lunch? As it cools, it's still hot enough to cook hot dogs on. Meanwhile, this is no picnic. These geologists from the University of Arizona said they had to monitor the wind to make sure they were safe from the volcanic gases that comes with an eruption.
After allegations of racism from Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, the British royal family is now on a diversity drive.
The Queen considering hiring someone specifically to make working for the monarchy more inclusive. A royal source acknowledging to ABC News that more needs to be done in terms of representation, adding diversity is an issue which has been taken very seriously across the royal households, meaning that the Queen, Prince Charles and Camilla, and Prince William and Catherine are all seeking to surround themselves with a more diverse team. This new push is said to have started before the interview that Prince Harry and Meghan gave to Oprah Winfrey, in which they claimed a family member had made racist remarks.
Meghan shared with us that there was a conversation with you about Archie's skin tone.
Legendary NBA Hall of Famer Elgin Baylor has died, considered to be one of the game's greatest players. He played 14 seasons with the Minneapolis and Los Angeles Lakers, Rookie of the Year, and an 11-time All-Star. He went on to become an NBA coach and general manager, the Lakers calling him the superstar of his era. Elgin Baylor was 86.
Welcome back. Today, the U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments in what some are calling the sleeping blockbuster case of the year. It's a debate over property rights and labor unions with potentially major implications for health and safety inspections, anti-discrimination laws, and the ability of farm workers to organize. Here's Devin Dwyer.
Cedar Point Nursery in far northern California is the birthplace of baby strawberry plants that feed a multi-billion-dollar fruit industry.
We're one of 7 nurseries that supply the California fruit industry that produces 85% of all fruit consumed nationwide.
Owner Mike Fonner has been in the business for 23 years. Each fall, he hires a small army of migrant workers for a 6 to 8 week sprint to get his product out to customers.
We have to provide them with a good, clean work environment, safe, warm housing, and good pay. We've never had any experience whatsoever with union activity.
In October 2015, the union came to Cedar Point. A group of United Farm Worker activists marched onto the property to organize. Fonner says he was blindsided.
They're chanting on bullhorns, and all work stops. It just literally stops while we're like going, what is this? It's a definition of an ambush, honestly.
Union leaders say it was hardly an ambush.
When we hear words like invasion, attack, those really have racist undertones for people that do not look like the owners coming onto their property. Trespass does not include the lawful activity of union organizers entering onto property for the purpose of speaking with workers under the Agricultural Labor Relations Act.
For 45 years, California state law has authorized union organizers to access farm property for 120 days a year, 3 hours a day during non-work periods. The rules were passed in response to farm worker protests and boycotts in the 1960s and 70s over poor pay and working conditions. Civil rights leader and UFW founder Cesar Chavez argued the right to organize on farm property was essential.
Many agricultural sites are remote. They're in rural areas where access to the internet may be limited. There is no central place for these workers. The work site can be changing from morning into the afternoon, let alone from day to day or from week to week. So when people come onto the work site, that makes them actually believe that these rights actually apply to them, that they can actually use them and they feel empowered to use them.
But Cedar Point Nursery and Fowler Packaging Company, a table grape and citrus producer which also clashed with the union, argue the law is archaic and should be struck down. The businesses sued the state in 2016, alleging that being forced to grant access to union organizers amounts to an illegal taking of their property by the government. The case landing at the U.S. Supreme Court with potential stakes far beyond the nation's farms.
I'm sure many restaurants would say the same thing about food inspectors. They'd say, we want to allow customers on our property. We just don't want to allow food inspectors to check to see if there are rats running around the kitchen. That ultimately is what is at stake here.
The Takings Clause of the U.S. Constitution says private property shall not be taken for public use without just compensation. It's typically applied to cases of eminent domain, but the farms want the justices to endorse a broader view, one that gives them more power to push back against state regulations.
I think this could be one of the most important cases of the term by far. And what the businesses are arguing here is they have a constitutional right to treat some people on their property different from others.
The stakes are high for the UFW. Despite more than 500,000 farm workers in California, only around 10,000 are union members. The group relies on access to farms to recruit and to educate workers.
I do the harvest of apples, cherries, nectarines, peaches, pears, all of that.
While working conditions and wages have improved over the years, and Fonner says his employees have no complaints, the state of California argues there's still much that needs to be monitored at farms across the industry.
Conditions are very intense. They're very harsh. They're working outdoors. They're still working long hours. There are still issues with adequate access to water, adequate access to shade, adequate access to basic toilet facilities even.
With a phone and a video recorder in every person's pocket. If working conditions are subpar, that that is exposed immediately, and from that phone will go to every platform imaginable: Facebook, Twitter.
The showdown over union access rights in California comes as union membership nationwide is at a record low, a sign of slower job growth in unionized industries and also the declining power of organized labor.
The choice to join a union is up to the workers, full stop.
President Biden last month throwing his support behind Amazon workers in Alabama as they try to become the first unionized Amazon facility in the country. Labor advocates say the Supreme Court's decision in the Cedar Point Nursery case could make the right to organize in some places harder to achieve.
It could be a real blow to accountability in a lot of other sectors that do not involve just labor law. There are just not enough laws protecting farm workers' right to organize.
Critics say you're out to attack unions, that you want to kill the unions. Is that what you're out to do?
I don't have a strong opinion on the unions. To communicate with someone effectively, they have the means. They don't need access to our property for that purpose. And we've got to change this law, period.
During oral arguments, many of the Supreme Court justices appeared sympathetic to the farm owners' claims, signaling perhaps the court could move to roll back those union access rights in California. But several justices also suggested a more balanced approach to protecting property rights, saying the right to organize and to access for those health and safety inspections are important as well. A decision in this case is expected by the end of June. Lindsay?
Devin, thanks so much. And now let's go back to Kana Whitworth, who is following that breaking news for us out of Colorado, where there have been reports of multiple injuries after a shooting at a Boulder supermarket. Kana, you're on the ground there, of course. What's the very latest?
So, Lindsay, it's still an active scene, although it does appear as if police have now secured that grocery store. Before we saw people again scrambling for safety, holding hands. And now, Lindsay, we are hearing some firsthand accounts of witnesses who saw this horrifying ordeal unfold.
I just looked at my son and focused. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to see him. I just didn't want to see him. I just didn't want to. I just didn't want to see him. 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 I just didn't want to see him
I just looked at him and just kept running.
I just heard a big bang, and I was like, it's kind of weird. Like, I didn't know if it was like a gunshot or whatever, but it was like probably 3 seconds before we heard another, just like bang, 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 and I immediately sprinted over to her and was like, hey, we gotta get out of here, and like pushed open the emergency door, and I like told her to run. And
I mean, that's just terrifying. We've heard several accounts here, people saying that they heard multiple gunshots. Also, Lindsay, just a few minutes ago here, the Boulder police have alerted another community. They're about 3 miles away from where this grocery store is located. They have alerted them that they need to shelter in place because they have additional reports of another armed and dangerous individual. So right now, they are investigating to see if these two incidents are related. Also, CU Boulder has gone ahead and canceled all of their evening classes, doing everything they can to keep their students safe. Of course, this is all unfolding as we speak. It is still under investigation. And Lindsay, we are hoping from an update from police any minute now.
Yeah, expecting that press conference. Just horrific accounts. Kana, thank you so much for your reporting. And before we go tonight, the image of the day, a mechanical engineer in Egypt examining his self-funded remote-controlled robot that was designed to assist physicians in running tests on suspected COVID patients. His hope is to eventually limit the human exposure to disease carriers faced by so many frontline workers. And that is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us, and good night.